It's time to start. Welcome everybody to our today's event, co-organized under the leadership of U-CERT project and EPB Center on the topic of building energy performance certificates, convergent evolution. This is a jointly organized web workshop together with all the ongoing Horizon 2020 projects from the Next Generation Energy Performance Certificates cluster. You can see all of them listed in alphabetical order in the footer, and I will name them D2EPC, E-DYCE, ePANACEA, EPC RECAST, QualDeEPC, of course U-CERT, and X-tendo. What do we have in store for you today? I will be giving a general introduction in my role as a building performance advisor at REVA. REVA is the Federation of European HVAC Associations, and I'll mostly be wearing my U-CERT hat on today, although REVA is involved as a partner also in the EPC RECAST project. Following that, Dick van Dijk will deliver the keynote on how the set of EPB standards supports convergence and coherence. And then we get to the, how I like to call it, the juicy part of the event. As you can see, we allocated roughly 1 hour for a lively exchange, which will be moderated by Jaap Hogeling, covering the entire cluster of Horizon 2020 projects, and you have the link in this slide where you can learn more about the joint activities, recordings of previous events, and also individually each project. We have our guest panelists from the projects, Panagiota Chatzipanagiotidou, representing D2EPC, Michal, Zbigniew, Pomianowski, representing E-DYCE, María Fernández Boneta, representing ePANACEA, Olivier Greslou, representing EPC RECAST, Stephanie Veselá, representing QualDeEPC, of course, Dick van Dijk with a second hat today, representing U-CERT, and Lukas Kranzl, representing X-tendo. Just quickly to recap the outline of our today's web workshop. We are now in the situation of having more than 30 different building performance assessment methodologies across EU member states. However, the context has highly changed now in 2021 than 10 years ago when they were first introduced in the EU's member states. Today, buildings are acknowledged as one of the key focus areas to deliver the European Green Deal, and more specifically, the renovation wave strategy. And we really need to get it right this time. A lot of finance will be mobilized in the coming years and decades to finally reach by 2050 the ultimate goal of having a healthy, safe, efficient, flexible, and sustainable EU building stock. Of course, there's no right or wrong, nor better or worse building performance assessment methodology. And ultimately, building physics or building science in general is the same globally. So it's now the moment in time where we need to see, can we really walk the talk? Can we leverage the available ingredients from the so-called technical layer of our goals, such as the set of CEN ISO energy performance of building standards, which are available since 2017, and the ongoing Horizon 2020 coordination, support, and innovation actions, against the backdrop that the EPBD is now open for revision, as most of you, I'm sure, have participated in the process so far. So can we make now this step together in the spirit of the EU's principles, including subsidiarity, and arrive at a common building performance coherence framework? To put it visually, we are, you could say, at a fork in the road. Maybe these two are the extremes. There are many possibilities in between. However, we would split them of just building back better, so business as usual, just improving what we do, in a way going fast, going alone, or can we now make a full transition and build forward together, which is highly likely to support us to go far. Of course, that's my personal opinion, and likely contribute to arriving by 2030 and 2050 at EU's goals and targets for climate and energy. Please, if you have any contribution, please use the chat box so that we can easily differentiate. And if you have questions that come to your mind during the event, please drop them in the Q&A box. That will make it easier for us to manage a smooth running event. Without further ado, I will pass now the floor to Dick van Dijk. We are really fortunate to have him today, as he is part both at European level and global level of the team that shaped the set of EPB standards. And Dick will be talking about how the set of EPB standards supports convergence and coherence. Good morning, Dick. Welcome. I pass on the floor to you.
Good morning, Andrei. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me to give this presentation. I take the control of the slides. Yes, there it is. So my presentation will be focused on the set of EPB standards and how these can support the convergence and coherence in the EPB assessment and certification. So I yeah, a little bit in front of my slides. Okay. So my background is given here, some relevant facts, but you can read them if you're interested later on in the recording of this webinar. So let me start by looking at how this set of EPB standards was developed. That was based on a mandate from the European Commission that was issued in December 2010. The mandate to develop a consistent set of standards to assess the overall energy performance of buildings to support the EPBD. So both for the energy performance certification and also to check compliance against minimum energy performance requirements. And the mandate asked clearly for harmonized procedures, but also for procedures that are flexible for national situations. So it's clearly not a one-size-fits-all, but flexible to tailor to national situation. And I'll come back to that later on in my presentation. So that was December 2010. If you look at the current status now, we have a set of international standards on the energy performance of buildings using this holistic approach on the overall energy performance. Most of these standards, as Andrei said, were published in 2017. 17 of these standards were developed as combined standards for Europe, but also at the global level, so worldwide level, and 36 standards are at this moment, or when they were developed, only available as European standards. Well, since 2017, a few standards have been added, and some of these standards, which were until now only available at European level, are now upgraded or being upgraded to become also EN ISO standards, so meaning for CEN and ISO, so both in Europe and worldwide. And the key EPB standards are all part of the new brand, which is the EN ISO 52000 family of EPB standards. Yeah, the set of EPB standards, they all, let me try to click this back. Yeah, so they all are characterized by common quality features. So they are intended to be fit for use in the context of building regulations to implement the EPBD, and that requires a certain set of quality features. So, for instance, we have an overarching framework. That's the EN ISO 52000 Part 1, and there are common quality requirements for all of the standards. There's an overall consistency on the standards, meaning that the output of one standard can be used as an input for the other standard that needs that as an input. But there's a common format for all the standards, and the quality is managed by a multidisciplinary international team of experts, which combines the experts from ISO committees and the most relevant CEN committee. And on top of that, explanation, justification, and examples are given in accompanying set of technical reports. Almost each standard is accompanied by a technical report. For instance, the overarching standard has this technical report, part 2, to give this explanation. And in addition to that, there are also accompanying spreadsheets to validate the calculation procedures and to provide worked examples for each of the calculation standards. And by the way, these spreadsheets can be downloaded from the EPB Center website. For the set of EPB standards, a modular approach was chosen. So, for instance, this means that there was a clear division into technical topics. So here you find the different topics and the number of standards covered by each under each of these topics. So you see here in total we have now already 61 standards. And the added advantage of this modular approach is that it enables a step-by-step implementation at national level, because you can gradually, successively replace a national standard on a specific topic by an EPB standard. The modular approach is also recognized in the form of themes. So we have as a theme a set of standards dealing with the actual energy performance calculation procedures. Then we have a few standards on pre-processing, meaning describing the indoor and outdoor conditions for the calculations, and post-processing standards, which gives you the EP indicators, partial or overall indicators, the energy performance requirements, not the requirements itself, of course, that's up to national regulations, but the ways to present the energy performance requirements based on the energy performance indicators, and the form and the graphics of the energy performance ratings. Then we have other themes, which are energy performance measurement procedures, building system or component design procedures, inspection, and others. But if we focus on the energy performance calculation procedures, then these top 3 types of EPB standards are the relevant ones. And from these, you could extract about 10 to 15 standards, which are the core set for the calculation. So starting point was 61 standards, but now it's brought back to 10 to 15 EPB standards covering different topics, from heating to the building and the overarching procedures and so on. So, of course, we have complete overviews of these standards, but I don't want to waste your time in going into these details. If you're interested, you can check at the EPB Center website for the webinar, the second webinar, recording which gives you a detailed overview of all the standards. In the current version of the EPBD 2018 version, 5 of these EPB standards are mentioned by name. And that is the overarching standard, of course, which gives you the overall energy performance standard and the overarching structure, and also the standard to calculate the energy needs for heating and cooling, the standard on climatic conditions, and then the 2 standards which gives you the overall and partial indicators. Well, as I said in the beginning, the mandate from the European Commission asked for harmonized but also flexible procedures. Well, that has been worked out in a way that each of the EPB standards gives you a number of clear options and national choices for specific features. So, for instance, on the user behavior, on external influences like the climate and cultural influences like building tradition, building typology, and policy and legal frameworks. So, for instance, the choice of the types of buildings. So, how do you make a distinction between different types of buildings? Do you see an office building as just an office building, or do you recognize different spaces in the office, like assembly spaces, halls, and the actual office spaces, etc. And for that, each EPB standard has an Annex A, which gives you the normative template for these choices, and an Annex B, which gives you informative default choices, just as examples, or could be used as a default for national use. And then at national or regional level, national annexes are prepared to fill in these choices. And sometimes you find the term national data sheets, and that's a technical difference with national annexes that I won't go into today, but the content is the same and the idea is the same. National annex or national data sheet. And again, I forgot to say, again, there's a webinar which goes into the details of these national choices. So this set of EPB standards is specifically suited for the energy performance certificates and requirements, and I can illustrate that with looking at the EN-ISO 52016 part 1, which is on the energy needs for heating and cooling and calculating the internal temperatures and heat loads. This standard contains both a monthly and hourly calculation procedures. And specifically for the hourly procedures, it has been tailored to the goal that it is a fully described, transparent hourly calculation method, but care has been taken to avoid that the number of input data that are asked from the user is making it difficult to assess the energy performance of the building in a reproducible way. So the input data asked from the user for applying the hourly method is not more than for the monthly method. And as you can imagine, the choice between the monthly or hourly method is done at the national level, whether both are allowed or just one or the other is allowed. But anyway, for the regulators in the country, it is made quite easy to switch from the monthly to the hourly calculation because the input data remain the same. And in our mind, the hourly calculation is absolutely needed to be able to deal with hourly interactions, with innovative solutions, and also to see the impact of the energy performance on the thermal comfort. For instance, in case of absence of cooling systems, or in case of undersized systems. And again, you can find details in one of the webinars at the EPB Center website. Speaking about the need for convergence, if you look at the plan to revise the EPBD, you can read that one of the aims is to update the framework for the energy performance certificates with a view to increase the quality and availability, for example, through greater harmonization and inclusion of other provisions. So, also in the EPBD, harmonization is a term that pops up now in the current plans. So why would you want harmonization? Well, I would say it removes barriers. It enables an efficient and reliable exchange of information. It will ensure a level playing field, and it also stimulates innovation. so if you now look at the other side of the cooperation, so now I spoke as part of the EPB Center team, but looking with my head as a U-CERT participant, a U-CERT project is aimed at better and user-centered and converging EP certificates. So again, looking at the harmonization, and I'll get a chance to say more about this in the panel discussion, I suppose, with my hat as a U-CERT participant. This brings me to the conclusion that the set of EPB standards to assess the energy performance of buildings is harmonized, transparent and consistent, specifically suited for the energy performance certificates and requirements, but also flexible to tailor to national or regional climate, building traditional or legal framework, modular, which enables a step-by-step implementation, but also it facilitates a regular maintenance and updating to be in pace with the increased knowledge and innovative technologies. So it also fit for nearly zero energy buildings, both new and renovated. It's a big set of standards, but there's only a small core of standards that are the most relevant ones, and others are for specific applications. And so the core part are all part of the ISO 52000 family, which are characterized by common quality requirements for the standards. So if you want to have more information, you can check our website. You find, for instance, under the tab support, a number of frequently asked questions for different themes, a number of short videos with explanations on the standards or on the tools, a number of webinars, overview of the EPB standards, of course, and you can search with search terms the whole website. And even if you're more familiar with the subject, with the EPB standards and regulations, you probably still have a number of questions. So even then you could find your specialized questions at the website. And if you do not find answers to your specialized questions, you can contact us by filling in the contact form for more specific technical support and information. The focus of the EPB standard is to grow in the future, to be able to continue the build-up of services. So the knowledge base will be further expanded. So, for instance, one of the next services you can find at the website will be example calculations of energy performance of buildings using the EPB set of standards, but also an increasing role as a platform to support the sister projects to further facilitate and enable the convergence and the access to high quality EPB assessment procedures and energy performance certificates. And that concludes my presentation, and I thank you for your attention. And I give the floor back to Andrei.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dick, for this really great overview and for the perfect timing, actually. We are spot on 10:25 as in our program. Of course, it's always a challenge to cover everything in 20 minutes. Still, you did a great job. And of course, to all the participants, the EPB Center is available to provide further support as needed. It's time to jump to the lively exchange. As I already said, we will have the moderated panel discussion with all the sister projects from the Next Gen EPC's Horizon 2020 cluster. And we are again lucky to have Jaap Hogeling as the moderator. in his role as coordinator of the team at the Committee of European Standardization that actually brought the EPB standards into reality. So welcome, Jaap. Really great to have you today. And I also would like to warmly welcome again our panelists. Panagiota Chatzipanagiotidou, representing D2EPC, Michal, Zbigniew, Pomianowski, representing E-DYCE, María Fernández Boneta, ePANACEA, Olivier Greslou, EPC RECAST, Stephanie Veselá, QualDeEPC, and Lukas Kranzl, X-tendo. Of course, Dick will be wearing his U-CERT hat on, and he will be part of the panel discussion. Welcome, Jaap. Welcome, dear panelists. I now hand over the floor to you, Jaap. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrei, for your clear introduction, and thank you, Dick, for your very clear presentation. I want to propose to the panelists to make it easy just to use our first names. I'm Jaap, and I was introduced already. So I will table this question, which is here on the screen, and I will follow the order that was so nicely set up in this this slide from left to right. So the first question is, in your project's perspective, what issues and challenges does the multitude of methodologies create for the building performance processes? So processes on the assessment procedure, on management, on certification, on design, on construction and installation, inspection, renovation. Well, your different projects, they all address a few of those processes. So how does that influence in practice your work in the different European projects, and also keeping in mind the European climate and energy targets that are, well, you could say, at the front pages of many papers today, and can never be forgotten. It is the essence of our work and of our projects. So first, I want to invite Panagiota from CERT, the Center of Research and Technology in Hellas, in Thessalonica, in Greece, to give her opinion about this question. You are muted, Panagiota.
Double muted, I guess. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
Thank you, Jaap, for this warm introduction. This is Panagiota from CERT, indeed, representing the D2EPC project, and I'm part of the coordination team. Our project started last September 2020. So in our initial activities, we did some desk and field research to identify currently used EPC schemes and methodologies that are employed in European countries for the definition of the energy performance of buildings. And we find out that there are a lot of methodologies, and there are in some cases based on national standards. So the use of different parameters and methodologies wouldn't enable, in our case, a comparative assessment of results in the certification process, and wouldn't be aligned with our project objective to follow an EU-wide approach. And also we think that this is relevant to other parts of the building performance process. Also, for example, the suggestion for renovations that come up with the assessment process, their impact would be different, because the energy savings or the energy consumption would be calculated based on different methodologies. So this impact cannot be measured or compared again. And this also goes to a general perspective. This backdrop introduces some issues in the adoption of European policies and targets, the fact that member states are using different rating schemes and different calculation parameters, it makes it harder actually to follow joint policies. And the same goes for the climate and the setting goals for energy savings. Because again, the calculation of the impact of the different measures on energy savings will be based on the methodology used by each member state. So this would probably result in different estimations of the actual impact of the energy policies in the end.
Yes, thank you. And given the fact that you identify that there are a lot of policies and also assessment procedures throughout Europe, do you think that this will impact also the BIM aspect in your project, because that is also an issue?
Well, what we decided as a consortium, I think, yes, this also is related to the BIM aspect, because it also ends up in the methodology and the calculation procedure that each country, each member state follows. I'm not talking only about the national choices that and the parameters that based on climate and building types or weather conditions. I'm talking about procedures that are based on national standards, for example. So this is also depicted in the modeling of the building and the calculation that is served through this modeling. We in our project, we follow this automated approach using BIM and digital twins for the calculation. And we decided as a consortium to develop 2 working groups that can support the EU-wide based deployment. So probably I will come back to that in your second question.
Yes, thank you. Well, the next I want to ask Michal from the E-DYCE project. Michal is from Aalborg University. Now, please, what is your answer on our first question?
Hello, Jaap. Hello, everybody. Thank you for invitation. Yes, in our project, we are aware of that there are many calculation approaches or different tools across different member states. This means we can have even in one member state, there are several tools and methodologies applied. As an example, for example, in Italy, there are many different tools used regionally, not at the national level, but actually down to the region. This, of course, would result in different result of calculating the same case or the same building in principle. We also we should be also aware of that the majority of these calculation methodologies nowadays in different member states are based on steady state approach. So relatively simple models. And what we are investigating in our project is how to do this transfer from steady state calculation to dynamic, which was in a way shown or presented that it is included and considered in this set of new EPB standards, and there are some guidelines how to do that. And in fact, we are doing this investigation to find out. First of all, is to transfer it to dynamic environment, and then in the dynamic environment to find out what is the level of detail and complexity that would result in credible results. We don't know exactly what is the credible result until we actually cannot compare our simulation modeling with measurements. We first begin to know what is the credibility of our modeling when we have references. So this means we have to do investigation of the necessary complexity of the modeling, at the same time having also the measurements at place from the buildings. So these are the two things that we investigate in our project: the complexity of the models supported by the measurements. Yes, to add on top of this the question, I think the set of the standards that that Dick has presented, they are very valuable guidelines. So we begin to use them actually to have a concrete foundation about, for example, the loads that we use in the model for standard approaches. This we will have to, however, modify it, for example, if changing from standard calculations, so with standard boundary condition and standard loads, if we want to change to actual performance of the building, this would have to be modified. And this is a little bit unknown area, how to do that, and what is the complexity of the models, what is the zoning, and how to possess actually the credible input parameters in order to change from standard to actual. So this is the part that we will investigate, also with respect to measurements. How can we derive some of the inputs and how to do that in order to get a better credibility of the calculation methods. Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. Well, be aware, as Dick said, that the EPB Center is available for you if you want to ask questions about the use of EPB standards in this dynamic way, because I'm sure questions will pop up, and I agree that it's not that obvious how to solve, to give all answers. Yes, but thank you very much for your explanation.
Yes, thank you very much.
The next, I will ask Maria about answering the questions in relation to your project. Maria is from CENER, the National Renewable Energy Center in Navarra, Spain. Maria, you are still muted. Okay, you are muted.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Jaap, for this introduction and for giving me the floor. I think this question is a difficult question indeed, because in the first place, we are looking for convergence and harmonization across the European Union, but we are 11 different projects at the moment, no? 4 of them innovation action with the objective to bring some new methodologies to this current scenario. What basically means that without a specific guidance and collaboration could imply less convergence, no, in fact. So I'm going to try to give my best answer on this. Well, as an innovation action, the main ePANACEA's objective is rather to develop an innovative and flexible methodology comprised by 3 different energy assessment methods and its decision matrix for decision. So focusing innovation on the energy assessment part of the EPC scheme, no? Through data-driven methods covering, for instance, inverse modeling, sensitivity analysis, automated calibration, inclusion of proper protocols for smart and novel technologies, and tailor recommendations based on actual consumption patterns, no? Real measurement, like my colleague said. However, through the project backbone, we're also facing this challenge regarding the lack of convergence across the European Union. and the need of harmonized protocols. We agree that EPCs are one of the most important sources of information on the energy performance of the European Union's building stock. Indeed, it is a key policy instrument that can assist the government in reducing energy consumption in the building sector, and an important element for climate policies, for instance, linking the instrument to the renovation wave strategy. However, for the EPC to reach its full potential as a useful element to support this energy transition, the information provided by them should be comparable and accessible, easily accessible across the European Union. From our project perspective, there are several challenges to overcome this issue, but I am only going to highlight 3 as more relevant at the moment in order to maintain my answer shorter. First of all, common terms and definitions are crucial to talk the same language in the energy efficiency of building sector. For this purpose, of course, the set of standards, the 52,000 standards, is playing a very important role. However, although at high developers level, the concepts are so clear, not all stakeholders show the same level of knowledge regarding definitions and terms. Many times happens that terms have to be clarified in advance before starting a discussion with the stakeholders. Secondly, in order to be able to compare data across different member states, overall performance indicators should be comparable. There is a diversity of main indicators at the moment that could be confused and induce a wrong comparison. For instance, regarding total primary use versus a non-renewable primary use. Since the current EPBD doesn't specify which of them have to be included in the EPC schemes, some methodologies at member state level include both, but others only one of them as main indicator for rating. So it would be very helpful that the revision of the EPBD clarify also this issue. Besides, regarding the normalization procedures of indicators, this is a tricky issue, because it should be better harmonized, since the proper definition, for example, of the floor area under consideration has a huge impact on the final value of the overall performance indicator. Finally, information well-defined and comparable, as I previously said, should be easily accessible. Introducing, for example, at each member state level mandatory databases, following standardized formats for automated information exchange between all member states, and specifically with the European Commission, of course. We also could talk about calculation procedures and rating systems and so on, but this could be too long for this session. So this is all from my side regarding this question for the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria, for your clear explanation. Actually, you touch the issue that all the standards are developed with this national possibility to use the national annex to fill in and to show which assumptions you have in your assessment procedure. Regrettably, not all member states did this until today. We also published a new standard, the 17423, on the description of the primary energy factors and CO2 emission coefficients, which could also be of help for member states to declare what assumptions they use in their certificates to express the energy performance so that you can really compare. But I agree totally with you. At this moment, this is a challenge. Thank you very much for your reaction. The next question is this question is for the next person, Olivier Greslou from CSTB France. Olivier, what is your reaction on our first question on how this your project deals with the different methodologies that are in Europe.
Thank you, Jaap, and good morning to everybody. I hope that you can hear me well. So I'm Olivier, coordinator of the EPC RECAST project and working at CSTB, the French Scientific and Technical Center for Buildings. Maybe just to introduce again very quickly the EPC RECAST project, we have a specific focus on the project, which is to work for two target groups. So the first one are the EPC assessors, and the second one are the building owners. So with regards to EPC assessors, what we want to do is to help them improve their daily working practices, making their data collection processes and parameterization of energy performance assessments more reliable, with quality checks, with new data collection procedures, so that then the results of energy performance assessments, especially when they are simulated, are closer to reality, and to measure the energy consumption, so that then the model that is used can also be used to define renovation actions that can be evaluated and provide meaningful results. And the second target of the project is to improve the renovation recommendations that you have on the EPC, so that then the EPC could be one of the center points to help building owners undertake deep renovation projects. So as said before by several coordinators, it's true that we have different national calculation methods from between countries and even at regional scale. We are not proposing a new calculation method or harmonized one in the project. What we want to do is to try to find a kind of convergent, harmonized minimum data set that should be improved for parameterization of calculations, and also a set of practices to collect data and then to check all the steps when doing the energy performance assessment. So the idea is to, what we think at EU scale is that what could be harmonized is the way EPC assessor work for the key, I think the key elements that impact the results of the energy performance assessment. And this is something maybe we can work with the help of EPB standards, but we will talk about that in the second question. So maybe just to provide an example, if we talk about the heat distribution losses in a given building, either evaluated or not at all in a given national calculation approach. If they are evaluated, are we using maybe an average efficiency ratio or default values? Or do we use the length of the pipes and heat losses that should be computed in a given building? So since we have different practices, what we want to do is to improve on-site inspections, for instance, so that when the EPC assessor goes on-site and maybe evaluates the geometry of the building, this information can be used in a different way depending on the national calculation approach than to evaluate heat distribution losses, for instance. And this can be done for different, physical parameters and phenomenon that you have in energy performance assessment. It could be done to evaluate the airflow rate, the ventilation losses. It can be done to evaluate the performance of the heating system. Should we use an average energy efficiency from a similar system? Should we go on site and check on the heating system what is the performance of the system, maybe based on a data sheet associated with this given system? Would we collect energy efficiency from eco-design databases? So once again, the idea is to have different practices of on-site data collection and through digital tools, but then we can have rules that can help the EPC assessor convert this information into parameters for the energy performance assessment. So this is what we try to do in the project. We cannot do it for all phenomenon in energy performance calculations, but we try to have this minimum set of rules and quality procedures to improve working practices.
Thank you, Oliver. It's clear that you have a challenge to make a choice what you want to look at, and we are very anxious to look at your results. Thank you again. Next, I want to ask Stephanie, from the German Energy Agency, DINA, and how she looks at our first question on the multi methodologies that are around in Europe.
Well, thank you, Jaap, for the introduction. Indeed, I'm from the German Energy Agency, and in QualDeEPC, we lead the work package 3, which is the development of enhanced EPC schemes. So in QualDeEPC, we do not directly look at the calculation methods, but it influences our work as well. So in QualDeEPC, we look more on the EPCs with special attention to deep energy renovation options and how to implement that in the forms, but also in the training and in the control of EPCs. So, but of course it impacts our work. And one is that it was really hard to get a good cross-country definition of what is actually deep energy renovation, because you can't really put a number on it because the numbers are very different, because the calculation methods are very different. Also, we try to achieve a more or less universal EPC form template, and there one of the big issues is to actually have a similar scale in our countries, because the values that are displayed are very different. So they look similar with the color schemes, they go from green to red. That's very similar, but the actual values displayed are really different and can hardly be compared. So that's also something our stakeholders, especially from the financial sectors, which really would like to look at real estates from different countries. So they find it really difficult to compare those things. Another thing QualDeEPC wants to develop, or our Greek partners want to develop, is an online tool. So kind of a calculator where building owners can have a first look on how their building performs and what kind of renovation measures they should take. But of course, here again, what calculation method do you use to implement such an online tool? Well, they found some way, but I think it was quite difficult. So all in all, I can say that in QualDeEPC, it would be much easier to work with similar values, but we worked our way around, and hopefully at some point we get more cross-country convergence. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for your explanation. The next on our list is Dick van Dijk. You could say a few answers on that.
Yes, thank you, Jaap. From the U-CERT project, so my main involvement in that project is on work package 3, which deals with the convergence of the set of EPB standards. So trying to come to a proposal for a converged set of national choices on the standards. The U-CERT project in itself is about developing user-centered and converging energy performance certificates. So the energy performance assessment methods are just a part of that, of course. But it's evident that the converged energy performance certificate requires, as others also said from the other projects, requires a converging of the assessment method to get comparable indicators and ratings on the certificate. And I could add, like Maria said, some things look very simple, but could be have a tremendous influence, like Maria said, the useful floor area or the floor area you use to get the energy use per square meter. If in one country you include, for instance, a large area of only moderately heated spaces as part of your floor area, then you have a large floor area and the energy performance per square meter is much lower than for other countries where you would say, well, this moderately heated space is not included or only partially included in the floor area. And that also is directly connected to differences in the conditions of use for the different spaces. So yeah, so the most important factors are how do you deal with the surplus of own produced renewable electricity? Do you appreciate in your energy performance that part of it is used in the grid, exported to the grid, or do you not appreciate that? Of course, the primary energy factors. And as I said, the floor areas and the conditions of use are very important. But also things like whether or not you have as a principle that you look at the actual presence of systems. So as I said in my keynote presentation, that you could follow the principle that if a space doesn't have a cooling system, then and then you don't calculate the cooling needs or the cooling energy use. And in other countries, you would say, no, we take into account a fictitious cooling system to get a level playing field and the same comfort conditions. So again, this has a tremendous influence on how you look into the energy performance certificate, because if you have if you do not take into account a fictitious system, but the actual system, which might be absent or undersized, then you have a more favorable energy performance, and then it's an absolute must that you also take into account the thermal comfort at the same level for the information, but also, of course, for the energy performance requirements. So yeah, so that is the answer to the first question.
Thank you, Dick. The last but not least, Lukas from the Technical University in Wien, who is reacting on our first question on the multiple methodologies.
Yeah,
Please,
thanks
Lukas.
also from my side for this, for initiating this discussion. Very interesting and important. I think in the E-tendo project, we are developing, or let's say compiling, innovative methods for improving, or innovative approaches, I would say, for improving EPCs along 10 different features. And we defined these 10 different features for different indicators, or smart readiness indicator, comfort indicator, how to consider outer air pollution and so on, but also how to make use of EPC data in enhanced recommendations, in EPC databases for financing options and so on. And we're compiling these methods and are testing them in different countries. And so, of course, we need to align these approaches, these methods, in order to be tested in these countries to the national methodologies, to the national performance energy performance calculation standards, and in order to also increase the chance that results from the E-tendo project might be uptaken in one of these countries later on, as long as the standards are not changed. And this, of course, makes it now difficult to transfer results from the testing projects, from the testing cases, to other countries. So that's a challenge that I see that we're facing just due to this difference in the existing standards. And also it limits, I would say, it limits the replication potential of projects like E-tendo and all our projects that we are here. That's my view on this. And the second point is that in particular also for financing options, I see also that financing institutions would like to see a better harmonized, better convergent calculation in order to allow them assess different projects across countries and not only within a certain country. That's also what we are seeing from one of these features on the financing options. So far, a few ideas from my side.
Thank you for a very clear answer, which reflects actually the challenges we have, because what you also mentioned, the financial institutions and we also are contacted by some of them, and they say, can you, and then I'm talking about EPB Center, can you offer us one harmonized tool that we can use throughout Europe, because we have buildings in different European countries and we want to compare them and to see where we have to invest. But we see that they use all their national procedures and we cannot compare it. So that's your problem as well.
Yeah, and in particular also if then the subsidies which may be available are based on the national standards.
Yes,
it's difficult
exactly.
to refer to European standards.
You cannot avoid it. Yes. Thank you very much, Lukas. Well, I propose a conclusion from listening to all of you is that you see it as a challenge, and that is an issue, and that you will welcome more harmonization. But of course, we have to respect the role of the member states as such. A second question we raised and we want to ask you is what kind of activities in your project conducting that facilitate the support and the overcoming mitigation for the challenges and issues we mentioned before. So what are you really doing to overcome these difficulties? Because most of you reported in the answer of your first question that you're aware of it, you're trying to solve it, perhaps you are trying to get around it by identifying the differences, because most of the projects looks at either measurements or assessments in different countries. So how do you deal with that in your project, and what kind of activities in your project you are conducting to facilitate this issue? So it's more. It is a second question because we ask you now more to be more precise how to overcome it, how to deal with it in your project, and how you perhaps could give some advice towards more harmonization. So first I want to ask Panagiota to react on this second question.
Yes, thank you, Jaap. So D2EPC is a project for enhanced quality user awareness, and we envision to deliver a dynamic assessment of buildings that is based on their operational performance and includes multiple indicators, novel indicators that affect the smart readiness, the LCA and financial aspects of the building. So our vision is to enable or support an EU-wide deployment and motivate towards going together faster, as the motto of most of our workshops and there is a reason for that. We anticipated these challenges in the beginning, and this is also stressed out from the work from the previous projects that are already running in this topic. So we decided as a consortium to formulate actually 2 working groups. One working group is focused on the asset energy performance rating of buildings, and the second working group is focused on the operational energy performance rating of buildings. So the aim of the first working group is to deliver a dedicated tool for the asset rating that is based on methodologies from according to existing European standards, the ISO 52000 series in particular. So we want to build on something solid, something already delivered and harmonized, and collect inputs and parameters, coefficient data from the member states. As member states as possible. Of course, the focus is on the use cases of the project, but we are trying to gather as many as possible. And the second working group is also focused on the operational rating, which is more challenging, I would say, because there is not a dedicated procedure for the assessment. So we are trying to see the procedures that are followed in the member states that follow operational rating or a hybrid mode, enable asset or operational both, and document the existing practices, what parameters they calculate, and define the parameters that we are going to use in our project based on standards, and additional indicators that we wish to include in order to enhance the quality and user awareness. So this is a first idea of how we approach this challenge, and all this information will be retrieved through BIM files. So the next step is to automate this calculation procedure and parse it into BIM models.
Thank you for this answer, and also for your clear statements on how to approach this. Thank you for that. Next is Michal. Could you elaborate on this second question and explain to us how you, which activities you are conducting in your project to challenge and to overcome?
Yes. Well, we like Panagiota, we also do the assessment, asset assessment in the calculation tools in here, and we do also the measurement assessment of the building. In the asset assessment, we are not developing the tools. We are basing our activities on existing open access tools, such as, for example, Energy Plus, having being well based in the modeling environment. In here, what we are delivering is we want to provide some relief to the assessors or evaluators by showing that it's possible to automate some of the actions. When moving from steady state to dynamic environment of modeling, there is more burden for the person who performs the calculation. So we want to show that it's possible to automatize some of the processes. This would be done, for example, in Python coding, so that it's automated. Some of the scenarios can be automatically performed. The second part about the measurements, here it is a little bit, as Panagiota said, here it is a little bit less defined how to do that. Well, we define different levels of monitoring that is will be performed in a number of demonstration buildings. And from these different levels of monitoring, we hope we will have a lesson learned what is the adequate monitoring required to match the modeling and to say that we can say the modeling is credible. So here we simply define different levels of monitoring. Some of them are defined based on the problem of the building. Some others monitoring are simply just defined by different level of detail of monitoring of the building. So we have different approaches for different demonstration cases that we have in the project. What else I want to say is that we want to provide knowledge, some expertise, additional value, but we are also aware that we will be able to deliver it only to some building typologies or types, not to all of the types of the buildings. So this is something that we begin to be aware that if we have the methodology, maybe the methodologies that we come to will be suitable only for certain building types, and the methodology would have to be modified or adjusted for different building types. So we begin to be aware that we cannot save the entire building stock. We can come up to certain methodologies that will fit to only certain buildings. But maybe this is the way it has to be done. Yes, so this is more specifically what we will do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you talk about more specific buildings and you have to limit, you are talking about the operational rating.
Yes.
Yeah. Because as both of you said already, that the number of standards in the set of EPBD on the operational side is limited. It is only limited to heating systems. And I could imagine that the outcome of your project could also be some proposals to extend the set of standards towards more standardization, the operational approach.
Yes.
That could be very welcome.
Yes.
If I also may comment, Jaap, on that.
Yes.
Indeed, we have highlighted some activities already in our agreement for providing suggestions and recommendation to standardization bodies in order to include those recommendations. We hope that come from the project and improve what is currently being done. That is why we have in our consortium two standardization bodies, the Austrian Standards International and the Spanish Association, to support us on that.
Great. Thank you for this information as well. The next is Maria. Could you endeavor on this second question? Which particular actions you took in your project in this respect?
Okay, thank you, Jaap, for giving me the floor again. Okay, first of all, we have developed a strong network for cooperation and obtaining feedback across the European Union regarding current EPC schemes, which enables the identification of needs from different perspectives. For instance, from policymakers, building end users or owners, professional associations point of view. This network also allows the cross-analysis of differences, but also similarities between EPC schemes at member state level. This enables the harnessing of synergies between current EPCs across the European Union and the ePANACEA methodology under development. With this objective, in the first place, ePANACEA comprises 10 organizations from 6 different countries. That is to say, Austria, Belgium, Germany, Finland, Greece, and Spain. We have built a strong link to these countries that allows developing a cross-analysis of the key EPC aspects, such as methodologies for energy performance assessment, definition of overall performance indicators, partial performance indicators, other additional indicators, the rating systems, and tailored recommendations for energy conservation measures and so on. Secondly, to cover the whole European Union project scope, we extrapolate these internal discussions at consortium level regarding these key aspects to our regional exploitation boards. We are managing 5 regional exploitation boards covering the whole European Union through 5 geographical regions comprising European policymakers, certification bodies, consumer associations, professional associations, and so on. I invite you to visit our project website at epanacea.eu, specifically the REPS section, to identify the regions covered by each regional exploitation board. What are southwestern, western, central, northern, and southeastern regions. At the same time, we are checking all the time the EPB standard set, trying to follow its guidance as much as possible during the whole project, in order to ensure appropriate terms, definitions, normalization procedures, type of assessment, rating systems, and so on. And finally, in line with the necessity of available databases and standardized formats for information exchange, we are also working on that through the ePANACEA online platform, a so-called SEPA, Smart Energy Performance Assessment Platform, where we are going to integrate the whole ePANACEA methodology, which comprises several data-driven and smart methods for accuracy improvement of the results, as well as a database to storage all data related to these procedures or methods. So that is, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria, for this clear answer. Next, I want to ask Olivier to react on the second question. How do you handle it in your project?
Yes, thank you, Jaap. As I said, as an answer to the first question, our key goal in the project is to improve working daily practices of EPC assessors. So what we are working on is defining a harmonized set of procedures to parameterize EPC energy simulations and thus to define input data of these simulations. And so for doing that, we want to have this common framework for energy performance assessment that should be compatible with existing national and regional energy performance assessment methods for EPCs, so not defining new approaches for simulations. For doing that, what we are doing currently in the project is that we are not starting by analyzing all national calculation approaches, because that would be too complex, even though, of course, we are looking at these methods, at least for the countries that are in the consortium. But we need a common reference, and we think that the set of EPB standards could help us for that, because as Dick said before in the first main presentation of this webinar, these new standards are flexible. We have different calculation approaches for different phenomenon in the building, for heat distribution, for heat generation, for heat losses of the building envelope, ventilation, etc. So we think that this common reference with different options for each main module in an energy simulation can be used then to define how we should collect data and how we should have harmonized data collection procedures, either on-site with inspection or also off-site by connecting with database or by comparing buildings with similar buildings. So this is how we are working on that. So the idea, of course, is not to analyze in all details all the EPB standards, is to understand what are the different calculation approaches that are defined in the EPB standards that could be used as a reference to understand what are the main calculation approaches for existing national EPCs. So this is the main approach that we are following. We are also, of course, trying to bridge the gap between simulated performance and actual performance. So we could also use EPB standards to work on operational ratings, how to collect information about actual performance and energy consumption of the building, and then to define approaches to calibrate our energy models so that we reduce the gap between simulated energy performance and measured energy performance. So that's the main connection, I think, with EPB standards I wanted to highlight today. Of course, I could talk also about the indicators, the recommendations on the certificate, but I think that's another topic that's less related to today's focus.
Yes, I agree. Thank you very much, Olivier. This is a clear answer on the question. Next, I want to ask Stephanie to react on this question. How do you integrate this issue in your project?
Yes, thank you, Jaap. As I said before, we're not looking directly at the calculation methods. So what we decided to do is to at first try to develop solutions which fit most of the partners. So for example, for the EPC template, we try to generalize things and but make them adjustable on a national level. So that's actually our approach. We try to provide templates for different solutions, so for the online tool or the EPC template, but also for deep renovation network platform, and try to grasp what kind of topics are the most important for all partner countries or even across Europe. But then there's always the step that's actually in the next work package 5, where there will be national adaptations. So yeah, but I can't really provide a solution for really the issue. Our solution is more to converge as much as possible, but also look at national adaptations, as I said before. Thank you.
I understand that given the nature of your project, you are really looking at renovation and communication with the consumer, with the building owner user, and to see if you can help them to be convinced to take actions. So it is more in that corner and less on the issue of assessment procedures as such. Yes, I understand.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. Dick, how does U-CERT look at this issue? Would you elaborate on that?
Yes, in U-CERT, we selected the 10 most important EPB standards, and we prepared a document, currently a draft, with all the national choices that these standards allow. There were a few hundred of these choices, ranging from very minor choices on technical details to choices that have technical choices that have a high impact, or policy choices with a high impact. And we categorize all these choices so you can quickly now see which choices are important and which are less important. And we are preparing a proposal for a converged set of all these choices, where we also explain the reason for making these choices. In addition to that, we are developing in the project web-based tools that will enable to see the impact of a number of these choices on the actual energy performance. So that covers the things that I mentioned before, like the impact of the choice of primary energy factors and on whether or not exported electricity from on-site produced electricity is rewarded, and a number of other of these choices. Yeah.
Thank you, Dick. So does that mean also that this information could also be valuable for several of our panelists? If I listen to their answers,
yes, I'm quite thrilled by the things I hear. So I think it would be quite good if we could, as quickly as possible, communicate about this proposal from the U-CERT project to the converged set of national choices and get a feedback from the sister projects and see whether it can be usable for their work where they are intending to use the set of EPB standards, and also to get feedback on the impact of the choices they come across in their project. Absolutely.
Yes, I ask this specifically because what we want as here together with those projects is to see if we can share certain parts of our work results to help each other. Because I see the difficulty if I listen to all of the panelists and also look at the different websites, it is impossible to absorb everything you are doing. So it's, but perhaps based on this communication, we could learn from each other which data, which information might be of great interest of one of you or certain projects, or perhaps more projects, and we should share it more frequently and perhaps before we finish a project, because that's always the issue, that you want to finish the project in time, and then okay, then all the reports come, but meanwhile these results are already on the table for a year or longer, and they could have been used by others.
You need to find a balance between giving the opportunity to give feedback, but at the same time to avoid that you create a burden for others to dig through documents which are not yet mature. But on the other hand, as you say, it will be a waste if you just circulate finished documents without any possibility to absorb feedback, which could be very, very valuable.
Thank you. Lukas, yes, you are the last again, but that's the slide from Andrei, so we cannot change that. But Lukas, could you react on our question?
Thanks. So no problem with being the last one. I think it was our choice for the acronym of X-tendo with the X being last in the row in alphabetical order, but that's perfectly fine. So I'm thinking of two activities that we are carrying out in this field of convergence and so on. The first one is that when the development of the methodologies in our project for the different indicators started, and when it was also then finally decided where the test projects will be, in which countries will they be, colleagues from Vito and at our university collected the all the different parameters needed in these different countries for calculating the EPCs. And of course, this collection of parameters shows the similarities, but also the differences. And while I don't think that this, extremely contributes to convergence as such, I think it is a contribution in that sense that it contributes to transparency and clarity, at least for these selected countries, in terms of these parameters which are similar or different, and thus also limits the application and replication of methods developed in our project for other countries. That's the first point that I wanted to mention. The second point is that I remember when we wrote the proposal, we were already discussing this issue of convergence quite intensively. And, when you're writing the proposal, we all know that you go through each and every word in the call text, and there was this clear convergence word listed in the call text in the work program of Horizon 2020. And frankly, we in our consortium were not very confident that, at least during the time frame of our project, this convergence step will happen. So what we thought is, with the modular approach that we are taking, with the different modules we are developing, we saw some chance that at least a few countries are taking up one or the other modules, and there is some, let's say, gradual convergence, at least around these modules, as long as there is not the real convergence with the harmonized standard across European countries. That was our idea, and that was also how we then structured the project and how we are doing it. And the third point that I also want to mention, I'm really convinced that the participation of different institutions in the project from the different countries, responsible partly also for doing EPC regulations, strongly contributes to a better understanding of the other countries. And I think that's the value of all our projects, that by the simply cooperation we understand the similarities and differences better, and thus provide the ground for more convergence and consolidated approach. That's it from my side so far.
Yeah, thank you, Lukas. Did you also notice that certain choices in certain countries are just arbitrary, are just made by coincidence, are not really based on well, you could say science, or it's just the way they do it.
I'm convinced that this is the case.
Yeah. So it should be very interesting to see that and to see also an oversight of that, and perhaps motivate the different players in your project and other projects to rethink it, and to see if we can come to a level of harmonization. Because we always talk, when we talk about energy performance of buildings, we say, okay, in the different countries we have different traditions. Of course, the physics is the same, but we have different way of having buildings, using buildings, but also different traditions in awarding certain properties of buildings and awarding certain behavior of people. So that there are differences, I'm sure, but as long as we can make them transparent, as we also do and try to do in the U-CERT project, it's not a problem. But that's of course the challenge, to make them well defined and transparent. But thank you, Lukas, for your answer. The idea, and in our program is now that we should have really a panel discussion based on the Q&A, but I didn't see any questions asked by participants on this webinar. But I want to invite any participants on this webinar who want to ask questions. I don't see it in our Q&A, but please drop your questions in the Q&A box. And Andrei, you didn't see any?
Thank you, Jaap. Actually, we are also 5 minutes over time. And this is because I think our projects are so complex in the way they tackle energy performance certificates and the processes and instruments and tools behind them, that it's always a challenge to focus on one key topic. And today, of course, we wanted to talk about this convergent evolution, and we really managed. I'm amazed the insights I think that all of us have shared. All of you, sorry, I was just the facilitator here. So I actually would invite all the participants to follow us, to contact us for any questions, and to stay informed. And because we are over time, I would just say thank you in all the EU official languages to all of you as speakers and panelists, and also to the attendees. And it's clear that we are walking the talk in terms of going far together in this cluster of projects. So we would really want to support that this happens also at EU scale, so that we can, let's say, make future-proof decisions for reaching our EU's climate and energy targets. So that's, I would say, the end of our event. A big thank you to all of you for integrating this in your very busy schedules, and for the really amazing insights that have been shared. I think this is just the beginning of the exchange on this specific topic, so we definitely need to follow up. Thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you to all panelists, and thank you to Andrei for taking this initiative. It's very valuable. We have to keep in touch with all the projects and exchange information as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for setting this up. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.